storm will be 400 miles wide, and we're on the what they call the dirty side of the storm. If you're on the right-hand side of it, that's where it's really nastiest.
Wow.
Sure, when I lived in New York, they said, move to Florida. Here we are.
That's how it always works.
3 hurricanes later, man.
All of my relatives in Boston have moved at some point or another to Florida, and it's the same. It's like there's the promised land, and it is, but it's the promised land with a catch.
Yeah, because at any point during the year you could be completely wiped out. But other than that, it's a nice place to live.
Yeah, how many times where you live, Mark, has been wiped out?
Nothing, but it's like I got to go through this every year. I got to move the plants in. I got to move the lounge chairs. You got to move the pool stuff. You got to hope your house doesn't blow away. Then you got to worry about flooding. And then the rest of the year, you just like sweat your ass off. That's all.
Yeah. Well, then there's like a couple months there where that's the magic, where you can walk outside.
December, January, February, I'm in paradise. Then the heat starts cooking, and then I'm not afraid to die because I know what hell is like. Thank you very much.
That's awesome.
But Mr. Matt, before we jump in, obviously you know Jim well from his days at Sirius, but I was doing research because I'm an independent promotion guy. I worked at a couple of record labels for many years, and I looked through my files and I worked a couple of your songs. Just so you know, I worked Run in January of 2012, and I worked what's the other one I worked in 2000?
Faster.
Yep.
Wow!
Can't
So
read my handwriting.
That's incredible. Wait, so you were at were you...
Open your shade a little bit, Mark. You're very dark on your one side of your face.
We got to get both sides. I got a lot of fans out there watching. There's no sun. How am I going to get sun in here?
Who were you working with at the time? Were you working indie, or were you a Capitol, or where were you?
Actually, I started at Arista Records. From Arista, I went to Columbia. From Columbia, I went to Capitol. But when I worked you independently with Patty Morris at Capitol.
Of course.
And then on the pop side, I worked with Joe Rainey. I don't know if you knew Joe.
I love Joe. He was one of the best.
He was one of my buddies in New York, and sadly, you know how that turned out, which was heartbreaking. But I mean, I obviously was close to Capitol. I worked there for 7 years, and then when I left them, I went back to Epic. I didn't learn my lesson about Sony, but that being said, then I started doing some independent stuff, and I was happy to see that I had worked your projects. But I had told Jim earlier, because I said, Matt Nathanson, I know Matt Nathanson, and I checked my Spotify, and Come On Get Higher is the highest most played song on my Spotify.
Oh, that's fucking great.
I love that. Any checks, if you're getting any checks from Spotify.
Dude, I love it. And they've got your name on them. I love it. That just says from Mark. It's perfect.
And it's funny. I mean, I'll let Jim jump in a minute, but I just want to give you some info because I'm talking to Jim earlier. I said, there was an artist on Epic I worked. I love that song. I love that song. I don't think it was Matt. And I did my research. It was Howie Day, Collide.
Sure.
I always mixed Collide up with Come On Get
so higher. So Collide was post higher, I believe, but I toured with Howie relentlessly throughout that whole period of time.
Well, I think he had kind of a sad situation too. I remember there was a family tragedy that kind of affected him, and then we could never really get much after that.
Yeah, he's still doing it, and he's doing great. But I think that was a weird time in music, and Collide was such a huge song, and there was so much momentum being built up. It was the first show I ever played with Howie was me and Mayer and Howie at the Hard Rock, at the House of Blues in Chicago, summer of 2001, and so that was the first time I'd ever been exposed to. Before that, I'd toured with, John Doe and and Marty Wilson Piper of the Church, and it was like, well, fuck, I don't think I'm ever going to find my fan base. And then I did this show, I remember, in Chicago at House of Blues with them, and I was like, sold every piece of merch I brought. Like, the crowd was hanging on every word, and I was like, oh my God, these are my fans. Like, wow, this is great.
That song is just fantastic. And
Two Guys in a Mic is the name of this podcast. We've already jumped in.
We jumped in. We were premature jumping in.
Dude, that's why it's okay. We'll clean it up after. It's just about the fun.
We'll do it in post. It's Matt Nathanson, a longtime personal friend, incredible artist. And if you're not sure what song we've been talking about, although I don't know how you could not know Come On Get Higher, here's a little piece of it.
Come on, get higher, loosen my lips, faith and desire, the swing of your hips, just pull me down hard.
Here you go. We got Matt here. It's been a while since I've seen you, my friend.
I know, dude. How's it going?
This past year has been a bit of a whirlwind for me.
I've Yeah.
After 22 years of making radio and making fun and history at Sirius XM, became the victim of a budget cut. And now I'm out trying some other stuff back in terrestrial radio a bit here in Fort Myers.
Oh,
Doing
great.
some work here and looking for some other things. You have room on your management team? Can I come to work for you?
Dude, it's you know, the thing that happened to you is happening.
Oh, I know.
You know, as you know, because it's just like all bad businesses were really affected by technology, and then COVID really accelerated it. And like, there's not a worse business than music in terms of the way it's structured. It's like, it's kind of like built on these, as you know, it's built on these like matchstick size support beams. And so as soon as technology comes and kind of like adjusts the blanket or whatever, it's like, I think the next one to go is probably higher education, because I feel like those things are, you know, a lot of independent schools and things like that, they're really living, you know, it's like their tuitions don't even cover their budget. And so we're in this weird time where things that were done and put together kind of jankily to use, you know what I mean? Not that Sirius was janky, but like the industry in which Sirius exists is a pretty janky fucking ecosystem. And so it's just happening everywhere, and it's interesting to watch and not fun to be a part of. It's like,
so let's go back and do some of your career and your start, in case those folks don't know. You grew up in Boston, but you live on the West Coast. But there you are in Boston. You're high school. You're not into athletics, are you? Are you into athletics when you were in high school? No, you're into music and finding girls, right?
I mean, I would just say music and masturbation. The two M's. I didn't have any.
So one of those, and it's not music. So there you go.
Yeah. You're the king of M. Which M? But yeah, so not into sports, and every girl's best friend.
Yeah,
that was what I was.
I got you. When did you start writing songs? When was your first song?
I think I wrote my first song in 6th grade.
Wow.
It was called, well, no, maybe, 6th. It was called "He Took Them Before Their Time," which is not
deep.
So I'm not religious in any way, but apparently I wrote a song about how God took all the great artists at an early age. So it was like talked about Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin, and I remember just playing it for my dad and being like, the lyrics were really, it's like, who plays the cards that makes a young man's life a wreck? Whoever it is, he's playing with a loaded deck. He put the king to sleep before his time had come. He made Mr. Mojo rise and go down with the setting sun. I mean, it was really
Wow.
It was over the top. And then,
but
like,
how do you know at that early age? How do you know the song structure and rhyming?
Well, so rhyming, I think it must have come from just like, you know, I was just such a nerd for music even at that age that like I wanted to be a part of it so badly. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was in 3rd grade, my student teacher, so there was a teacher in my public school and then a student teacher who was learning. And so she was 21 and the teacher was whatever age a teacher is at that time, maybe 40. And I overheard her talking about having tickets to see the Jay Giles band at the Boston Garden. So this was freeze frame, so it had to be 81. And I overheard her saying it, and I was a Jay Giles fan because I was from Boston, and that's like the trifecta. The Holy Trinity, if you grew up a rock fan in Mass, was like Aerosmith, Boston, and Jay Giles. So I approached her and said, I hear that you have an extra ticket for sale, or an extra ticket for the Jay Giles show. I'd love to go. So in 3rd grade, and she was cool enough to be like, okay. And then my mom dropped me at her teaching college, and I got in a car with a bunch of her buddies, and we drove to the Boston Garden and saw Jay Giles and John Butcher Axis on the freeze frame tour. So that's
a pretty special mom that's going to let a 3rd grader get into a car with 21-year-olds.
Yeah, you could say it was either special is a great term. So it's like she either really, I think it was a combination of she was relieved that I was not on her watch, and she was psyched that I was going to go do something that I was passionate about. But that probably falls a little less in it. I think my mom was a little more self-focused. So I think for her, it was like, okay, do it. You want to do that? Go do it. So that was really the beginning. And for me, like Kiss was the beginning of it, like in 78, 79, when I first saw the visuals and heard, Destroyer and Rock and Roll Over. And then I went to see the Jay Giles band and I was like, fuck, I'm in. And then, so as soon as I could get a guitar, I started teaching myself chords. And I learned from a great teacher in 6th grade who would teach me kind of basic chords. And I just wrote these songs and I started doing it. And then I performed in front of the school. I put a band together with 2 other kids, one of whom had never even played a bass. And I was just like, that's okay. Just get a bass. And the kid was like, like watching his fingers. And then this kid played the drums and he was actually a really good drummer and a guitar player. So I created this band in 6th grade. And it just sort of kept going from there. The only change was that I realized I wasn't into democracy. So I got rid of the band and I was like, I'm going to be Matt Nathanson. How about that? But I did try all through high school as well. I went to high school in New Hampshire and I was in boarding school from the time I was really young, 5th grade on. And so I just was there all the time and created these bands and wrote these songs and imagined I was putting a record out and what that would be like. And then I just never stopped.
Wow.
Pretty
We're here with Matt Nathanson. It's 2 guys and a mic. Please like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and then you'll get notified every time we put up a new episode, which is usually on Mondays. It's been a while. I remember first meeting you at Sirius XM when Come On Get Higher was the song you guys were pushing. And I know we jumped on it early and just were huge supporters. And then, throughout your career, and we did a bunch of Live in the Vineyards together and hung out a lot in San Francisco a couple of times.
Oh, yeah. You're the best. And your support of my career has been like, I mean, I was beyond fortunate. It was great. And getting to hang with you is my favorite thing. I love it. So, yeah. It's awesome.
It was fun talking. We actually, Mark, Ron Ross and I went out for a Live in the Vineyard, met Matt for lunch. I don't even remember where, somewhere in San Francisco. And we sat outside and we talked music for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Like, what's your favorite album? What was this, that? And it was just, we didn't want the conversation or day to end. Finally, we were like, we got to get up to Napa. We got something to do in a couple hours. So, but it was cool. Really
well,
cool.
that ties back to like what we were talking about. The thing that's so great about getting to do music in whatever form and to be in this business in any form, it's magical because music is really the only thing that it's the closest. I always say it's the closest we get to our best selves, right? Like listening to and creating and being a part of the feedback loop of like a great song. And so, yeah, when we get to nerd out, it's just, I would do it all the time.
The biggest nerd out moment I ever witnessed for you was one of those Live in the Vineyards. And it wasn't at the Uptown Theater. The earthquake had happened. So they had moved it to that other venue. And Matt got on stage. He did his whole thing. But at the end, he decided to do a Guns N' Roses song.
Yeah.
And the whole crowd started singing it back at you. And you were just like floored. But it was so cool. It was such a great night and moment.
Dude, it's the best. People always say, like, do you want to do karaoke? And I've only done karaoke twice in my life recently. And before, I'd be like, why do I want to do karaoke? My whole job. Like, I can go into a Journey song in the middle of, I could do anything I want in the middle of, I'll do my song and then I'll start talking and I might riff off into, you name it, a Prince tune or a Joni Mitchell song or whatever. It's part of the fun. Yeah.
How about if you went into a karaoke bar and you did Come On Get Higher? How about that?
Dude,
you think they would catch on?
I feel like I would. First of all, there was the one karaoke experience I had that was a genuine one. There's a place here in San Francisco called it's in Japantown and it's subterranean. So you have to go down into it. And there was a guy there that was like definitely color of moneying the situation. He was definitely like Tom Cruising it, where he was kind of sitting at the end of the bar, like meh, and like people would do it and he'd study them and then he'd get up kind of, and then he just was like the Lion King. He just destroyed everybody. So I was like, I think I'm going to try and smoke this guy.
Nice.
So I got up. I didn't do one of my own songs, but I definitely did one that I was like, and I hit it. And he kind of, later he was out smoking a cigarette. He comes out and he's like, he's with his boys, and he's like, you're pretty good. And I was like, yeah, I just dabble. It's just fun.
Yeah,
Just dabble here, just a
Yeah.
little bit.
This is great.
that's great.
It's great.
So you're writing songs, you're in high school, boarding school, you know this is where your career's going to go. How do you land that first record deal that you get?
So I was fortunate in that John and Jack Johnson happened. So being a white dude with a guitar was like all of a sudden cool. And it had been not cool for a really long time. I mean, I'd been making records since 1993. And I'm not saying that my records were so good that people were really missing out, but it was like the feedback you get from an industry that doesn't want to have anything to do with you is usually like telling. And they would say, well, you should really be a band. You should really be a band. Nobody's signing. Nobody wants a singer-songwriter. So all of a sudden, when Jack's record took off and Mayer's record took off, I was swept up in that kind of thing. And I toured with Howie Day, who was a darling. His manager at the time, Sean, did an unbelievable job of playing all the labels against each other and building a story. And so I was just swept up in all of that hullabaloo. And Jolene Cherry, who had an imprint over at Universal, just kind of like came and saw a show. My old lawyer set it up and came to a show and was like, I love you. I want to sign you. And I was like, okay. And it had been 5 records at that point where no one had wanted to sign me. You know what I mean? Like I'd put out 5 independent records and built a following, and I was touring and making a living doing that. And then all of a sudden, Jolene, I remember her just being like, I want to sign with you. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And we kind of worked the deal out. And I worked the deal out actually with Doug Morris, who ran Universal at the time. Like he and Jolene were pretty tight. And I kind of said, okay, there's a couple things on this that I'm not into. And I negotiated them down with Doug myself. And it just worked. And so I signed that deal. I made a record. I had a budget for the first time in my life. It was like $300,000 or something, and it was incredible. And I got to indulge. I got my favorite drummer, Matt Chamberlain, to play, David Garza, my favorite guitar player. We made this record. It was really great. I took it out on tour. We didn't really go to radio. We didn't really do the things that I thought we should do, but whatever. And we got it to like 60, 70,000 records just by sheer force of like touring and will and doing everything that anybody asked. And then they were like, great, let's go make another record. And I was like, wait, I don't want to make another record. I want this one to go. Like, what do we have to do to make this one happen? And they were like, well, we want you to make another record. And so I sat down with the head of Universal, Monty, and Mello Winter, who was the CFO, I think. And I just sat down with them and I was like, hey, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't think this is a good fit. And you guys are awesome, and you're very clear about what you want, and it's very cool. And like, I don't want to be here. I think it's a bad fit. And obviously, that label and those guys have gone on to take over the industry. And they were I always love how much of a straight shooter. He was just like, look, okay, cool. This is what we do. And I was like, yeah, I think I need a little more than this. I think I need some research and development and some work and some I need small movements to make this thing go. And he was like, cool. And I said, so let me out of my contract. And he was like, no problem. Let me out of my contract. And then I made a record by myself with my buddy Marshall and a buddy of mine I went to college with. Marshall was a record executive at a couple labels that had tried to sign me to like Hollywood, but nobody ever really bit. And I got Marshall and my buddy Mark together, and we made a record independently, and it had Come On Get Higher on it. And I found an independent label, Vanguard at the time, and Marshall hooked me up with them. They were like, we want to sign you. I did a great deal with them for the record, and then the rest is sort of, kind of launched my career into a place that was like, whoa, this is totally different.
Well, all of a sudden,
only
Come On
takes
Get
one hit,
Higher
right?
is getting airplay.
Yeah.
And radio's playing it. So that had to be a huge game changer.
It was bananas, dude. I had never, and I mean, sure, I had tours with Mayer. I toured with Tori Amos. I toured, I had great tours after the Mayer thing. I found my people and I built an audience, and it was really exciting. But I'd never had people that I didn't feel like I knew
Right.
singing my song to me. And there was a visceral moment on stage for like a radio show in Des Moines. It was like a summer series on the lake or on the river, and they had like a hatch shell, and we were playing. And I remember thinking like, this is a lot more people than we usually play to in Des Moines, but like this is about right. Cool. We're getting bigger in Des Moines. And then I played songs and people were into it, and then we played Come On Get Higher, and I remember just turning to Aaron, my guitar player, and being like, holy shit, I think this is what it feels like to have a song that people like. Like this is a hit song. That's fucking crazy. It's like they sang, and I was like, I don't know these people, and like I don't know why they know this song, and like their reaction to it is so like it's seismic, and I was like, yo, this fucking rules. Like I'm way in on this, and that was it.
So how did you write that song? How did it come about? Did you wake up and it was in your head like so many artists tell us, oh, it came to me in a dream?
So that one was I find that sometimes songs come really fast, but most of the time for me, songs take a real long time. So I had the melody. We recorded that song 3 different times. And I was really pushing to get it right. And it started fast. And then I was like, oh no, let's slow it down. And I was like, the pocket's not right. And the lyrics weren't done. And so what I did is we recorded a version of it. And then I had these mumbly lyrics that didn't make any sense. And we finally at least got the feel to be right. And the band was playing it correctly. And then I remember just driving around Los Angeles. I would track my vocals at a different time than we tracked the band. So we tracked at a studio. Finally, the 3rd time we got the pocket. Marshall did a great job of kind of getting the band to feel a certain way. It kind of had this like use me, Bill Withers kind of feel in the kit. And it was really like this great nuanced thing. And I remember just driving around in my rental car like I would do a lot to finish lyrics. And I'd put the CDR in the thing and just drive for like 3 hours. And I would just sing whatever I thought I wanted to hear over the track. And it was like, I might have had, I miss the sound of your voice. I might have had, I miss the rush of your skin. But the chorus was just a jumble. The melody was da 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 da. And I remember like singing to it and changing the melody slightly. And all of a sudden it was like, it just sat correctly for me. Like I was talking to a producer today about this. I have a lot of friends who believe that music is subjective. But I believe that like when things work, they're pretty absolute. There's absolutes. And like when it occurs, a lot of people will feel that it's working. Like it's, there's outliers to this, but like when a song is dialed in, there's a reason certain songs connect and certain songs don't. And I just like, for me, I was just waiting to try and figure out how this song that I thought was so important that I wanted to track it 3 times. It was the only one we tracked 3 times. And I was like, dude, I just think the chorus melody is really catchy and I think it's going to be worth it. And I've been wrong on this many times. Like I have chased songs that 1000% went nowhere, even when they were finished in a way I liked. But Higher was one where I was just like, I just think we need to fucking keep chasing this. And I was dogmatic about it. And I had enough people on my team that weren't saying like, no, you have, it's like I gave 0 fucks about what anybody thought. I liked myself much better in that respect then than I do now. As I get older, it's harder and harder to damn the torpedoes, and like, but I did it on that song. And finally I went in and sang it at Marshall's. Like I'd driven around the valley in this rental car, went in, walked upstairs. I said, I think I got it, and went in and like had the lyrics, and it was like, come on, get higher, loosen my lips, faith and desire in the string of your hips, pull me down hard and drown me in love. Like it just made sense, and it felt honestly like what I wanted to say in the song to the person. They were like little letters that I wrote, and I just wanted the letter to make sense. And then there's a part in the song where I go, sing sha-la-la, which I would never have thought if my brain had been engaged and I had been dogmatic about instead of following what the song wanted, following what I wanted. If I had been dogmatic like that, I don't think I would have gotten that, which I think is kind of the most fun part of the song other than the hook. It's like, it feels like, oh my God, that's what people I like do. I don't know who did that, but you know what I mean? Like there are these magic between the overthinking and the 10,000 hours. There's magic that shows up like in the in-between. And it's happened since, but that was a really neat moment where like it was a combination of sheer will to make something work, and then surrender to the fact that like, well, the track's fucking done and it sounds like this and this is what it wants. You know what I mean? Like you feed the dragon what it wants. And it was just this great kind of fun moment that then turned into this thing, that wouldn't have happened if Vanguard hadn't put the money behind it. I'm sure, it takes so much, as you both know. The ecosystem is so, not just the song is so good, it just smoked through the fucking world, which happens occasionally, but mostly it's like a lot of people did a lot of work on behalf of this song, and it kept showing signs of improving. And that was like, I was fortunate to have that team.
Well, just so you know, I drive around in a car and I sing it too. So
I love it. I got to get you. I'm coming down to Florida next time I'm stuck. Man, we're going to get in the car together.
I mean, the lyrics on it are just incredible. It's just like a sexual, sexy, beautiful. I mean, it's hot. It's great.
That's
I never
fun.
get bored of seeing it, man.
Thank you. And it's fun because songs are also fun because they mirror back. It's like a picture of yourself in high school or whatever. It mirrors back who I was, and I'm not that person. Right. You're never that person again. Like, and I used to think like, oh, I'll always be this person, and then you realize that like, oh no, that person is a cog in the like it's a step in the staircase of my life, and I'll never feel that way again. And then you have this appreciation for songs differently.
Two guys in a mic. It's Mark and Jim, and we're here with Matt Nathanson, who has had a great career, including a massive hit that we've been talking about, Come On Get Higher. Who's the first artist that ever came up to you and said, man, that song is just killer. That is a home run.
I've had some really fun, I think the new generation of kids, like they have this built into their DNA. They're like kind of hustlers in a weird way. Like Taylor Swift was a fan, and Ed Sheeran, and people would come up and they'd quote really strange, obscure, weird songs to me. Like they'd be like, well, I love this song. And I'd be like, what the how do you even know that song exists? And at the time I was always like, this is the coolest thing. And now what I've realized is it's a bit of the shtick. Like they love it, but they might say this to they're just fans of, I take it less seriously than I did at the time, where I was like, oh my God. Like, I remember people were tweeting about it, like Selena Gomez, I remember tweeted like sitting at a bar and Come On Get Higher's on, I love this song so much or whatever. And I remember just thinking like, well, that is fucking cool. And then when other younger musicians come up to you and they're like, I really love your stuff, I remember I used to take it really seriously. And I used to be like, that's so fucking rad. Now I realize it's part of the shtick of being, everyone was always like, I'm doing the thing that I've always wanted to do. And then, it's like part of the generation where they're like finally getting to do, like Noah Kahn had every duet in the fucking world on his record. He like duetted thousands of people. And like by the 17th time that he was like, this is the person I've always wanted to do a duet with, I was like, okay, this is a fucking marketing move. And for me, it's like on my new record, I have the Indigo Girls, who are heroes of mine in a way that like I don't understate anything, right? And so it's like I wouldn't exist if it wasn't for them. And so getting them to sing on a song was so seismic to me. And like, I'm not saying Noah Kahn didn't feel these things that he felt, but there's a thing these days where it's a lot of people are like, I can't believe I'm finally with so-and-so. And it's like, for me, yeah, I take it a little more seriously. I think I just take it, I take it real. It feels epic to me.
Is there anybody from today's generation or just, in the last 10 years, an artist that you would love to work with?
Oh, there's so many great artists. Like last night, I was thinking about you. I don't want to fast forward, but we were talking about five favorite records.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, one of them that may or may not make my top 5, but like Ella Lord, she's just so good. I mean, like the first record and the second record especially, I was just sort of like listening last night. I couldn't believe that somebody thinks that way that's 20 something years old at the time that she made that record. Or there's a ton of artists. There's a guy named Steven Wilson Jr. who's a country guy, and I just think he's the shit. And it's like, there's definitely a ton of people that I think are really talented, But that thing that I'm looking at my Spotify playlist, but that thing that you did where you were like, name your top 5 favorite albums, which I always thought, oh, this is easy. I can do this in my sleep. I realized like,
Mark and I did this on the show earlier, so then we figured, oh, let's take Matt because Matt's such a music head. I'll ask him.
dude, I love it. And it was harder than I thought because a lot of the new artists, I might love a record of theirs or I might love a couple songs, but finding somebody who's like gone 4 or 5 records deep on amazing shit that would feel so incredible to be a part of, that doesn't happen as much these days for me.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know, I don't want it to be because I'm old, but like I want it to be because I'm, I think we got to give more time. So it's like there's certain records, there's this artist Odile who I love, and like I can't wait to see what the next Odile record is like. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't say that record's my desert island because I got real analytical about it. I was like, well, let's give her 3 or 4 more records before I pick my favorite. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm surrounded by my heroes from from generations ago. I just think there's like, can't stop it. But so there's always people these days that I'd like to do. It's less, but there's still those people. I think Ella's a fucking genius. I think Stephen Wilson Jr., he has 1 record out. I think it's amazing. So yeah, there's stuff in there.
But before we get to the top 5, I've brought this up before because Mark and I come from the pop world, where you're always looking for what's going to be a hit.
Yeah.
And it's a tough thing to nail it down because, the public's perception is subjective, as that word came up earlier before. You may think you write the catchiest song, but, it might not connect with the audience. Do you feel like if you go back to, I'll just go back to like the music that I grew up on in the 70s and 80s into the 90s, okay?
Yeah.
I find so many songs have stood the test of time from back then, and I just don't know if you're hearing that as much anymore because people are shooting to get that one hit, and an album's just not as important anymore.
There are no albums now.
Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran, there's a few artists that do that, but the majority of artists just don't do that much anymore.
Yeah, like
or
you
am
said,
I not? Because I'm looking for hit music. Maybe I don't, see it. The albums are more important than I think they are.
So it's like a multi-tiered thing. The money is not the same.
Yeah.
So the amount of effort that people can spend to make a thing is much different, and the way music is made is much different. And the way that before, when Thriller existed, Quincy Jones could like immerse himself in like, I'm going to get Toto to be and then we're going to recut it, and then we're going to do this, and I'm going to spend time, and that happens differently now. Doesn't mean that kids don't do the same amount of effort, but it's just different, and there's less collaboration occurs more like through sending things to each other more than being in a room together and cooking. And so I think that pop music is still the place. Oh, I mean, like that Billie Eilish record all the way through the first one. I couldn't believe it. I think like 5 songs on the Chapel Roan record I think the record's good, but there's 5 songs in there that I remember thinking. I first heard a song called Casual when I was last May, and I remember being like, this is the best song I've ever heard. And then and I remember reaching out to a bunch of people being like, what do you think of Chapel Roan? People were like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, like overnight, it became the thing. And this song Casual to me is better, as good as, it impacts differently because the landscape has changed so much. We don't get the same saturation. So things don't live in our DNA the way they used to.
She came on my radar 8 to 9 months ago when my granddaughter was like, her and her friends were so into Chapel Roan. And then I don't know if you saw earlier this summer when she did Lollapalooza.
Oh, it was bananas.
120,000 people are singing Hot to Go back at her.
Dude, it was bananas. And this song Casual is the lyrics are incredibly progressive. That's the best way I can put it. It's like we're knee deep in the passenger seat and you're eating me out. Is it casual now?
No.
Like 2 weeks in your house in Long Beach you know, and that your mom invites me. Are we casual now? Like, it was this great thing where I was like, those are some fucking lyrics, man. Like, is it casual?
And
Like,
there's something to be said about when Elton John gets behind
Exactly. When he
a
finds something,
current
gets
artist,
behind
like
it.
he's
Yep.
a massive fan of Chappell Roan. He was a massive fan of Ed Sheeran. He's a massive fan of Dua Lipa.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah. He's got his finger. That guy never stops listening to music. It's really
Yeah.
impressive. It's like inspiring. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I think to answer your question, we're just in a different ecosystem. So it's like sometimes I get depressed because I think like, well, I have this Patreon, and on certain people's birthdays I'll send these cards, and in the cards I'll write, on your day in history, this is what happened musically, right? And so I'll be going through, and I remember thinking like, holy shit, 1987, what a fucking year for music. 1991, what a year for, you know, like I'm having these moments where I'm like, oh, why isn't it like this, man? I mean, 1987, you got The Cure, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Joshua Tree, Appetite for Destruction, you know, In Excess Kick, I believe. You got, I mean, it's Tunnel of Love. It's endless what the pop landscape gave you that felt substantial, but it was just different. Music was taken seriously then.
yeah.
And there was more money in it, and there were curators of it within the industry that I used to think, well, fuck these people. I can't wait to get rid of the gatekeepers. And then we got rid of the gatekeepers, and I was like, oh, I think they were important. Like, that's so annoying. Like, I think people making the fucking choices for people who can't make choices on their own. That was a really magical time, and they buoyed up certain records like Bonnie Raitt, fucking Nick of Time, won a Grammy. Like, when would that have ever happened in any other fucking place? And you got Nobody's Girl, track 6 on that record, which is a weird, it's like, this is what I'm saying. Like, it was just an ecosystem that supported itself, and now it's hard to find ecosystems that support themselves anyway. And yeah.
For all its problems back, you know, the time you're referencing, radio is still a massive deal.
Yep. And you could game the system so
Yeah.
that you could, if it worked, if the song worked, you could get MTV to bang the shit out of it. You could get Rolling Stone to put it on the cover. You could make it become a thing. And now you can't, which is kind of awesome, frankly. But like, it's just a moment in time. But it's like, we were fortunate to live through a time where they did that. 70s was like a different animal altogether.
Yeah.
You know, 70s, 80s, and then the 90s when there was so much money in the fucking pipeline that Geffen would give Sonic Youth money to make records. Like, what fucking, what year? What is that? And like, that's what we had. It was one of those moments that like, I don't think we knew how fun it was until we don't have it anymore. And I think it's the same now, by the way. Like, this is a pretty magical time. I just haven't quite figured out how yet.
Well, tell me about it. I mean, I don't know if you heard about what went on last Friday, where they basically took apart Atlantic Records. And entire departments were let go, promotion people were let go. And as Jim started to speak about radio as the vehicle or the engine that drives the train, is now not the engine that drives the train anymore. It's not the priority. And, you know, to see them cut back on what, you know, I grew up with, and Jim obviously made a career of, that radio is not as important, and they're going to put their money and their personnel into other departments to develop. But I still believe that radio has value, and it's still free, and people do listen to it. And, you know, some of the music gets on there may be a bit delayed compared to how they're discovering music these days. I mean, if it's a 30-second TikTok thing and the next day it's blowing up with streams and downloads, that's going to be a lot quicker than a guy playing a record in El Paso for 20 weeks until it gets into head.
Well, you still have
it's a whole
over
different
90
thing.
million people listening to FM or AM radio on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
You know, I know the country has got 200, 300 million, however many are here. And, you know, but still, it's a significant number.
I think that, again, there's just, everything has to adjust. And if you're slow to adjust, it's really difficult for anything that's slightly higher above ground. Do you know what I mean? That infrastructure wise, pivoting in those things is really, really hard, no matter how much they want to pivot. Do you know what I mean? Like managers that manage a lot of clients instead of just a few. And it's all like they manage a lot of clients. It allows them to employ people. But then like when they have to make moves, they have to then take into consideration, like, well, I have all these staff and I have this thing. It's a really weird thing that I don't quite get. And I'm, when you're a big lumbering thing, it's really hard to get stuff done quick. And these days things move so fast.
Quick.
I mean, it's bananas. Like, think about how spent TikTok got, how fast that thing got spent. Like, all of a sudden you had Noah Khan, you had Zach Bryan, you had like a handful of people who really used that platform at a time when it was just emerging, and it just was able to infiltrate, and it was just able to get to people in a way that felt like, these are my people, like early MTV. Then all of a sudden, almost overnight, you're looking at cats on a Roomba and people like wiping out on BMX bikes, and nobody pays attention to fucking somebody playing acoustic guitar. It's like the world just moves so fast that I don't know how you'd build a real business in it. I just, that's for a bigger brain than me. Do you know what I mean? Things that can pivot and be big. It's like a wild ride, but the
and
gutting
catching
of the
people's
music-
attention. I mean, catching people's attention now, because we're in the age of streaming, right? And to get credit for a stream, you need what, like 30, 40 seconds, right? To have a stream count. You can definitely see it in pop music where more and more songs are now not even getting to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Boom, boom. And the hooks are coming really early in the songs.
They have to. Yeah.
They have to in order to make an impression.
Yep.
You
But
know,
but again, like all things, people are bound to find their way through it creatively. I just don't know. Every day is a battle for me. Sometimes I'll wake up and I'll be like, we got this. And then some days I'll wake up and I'll be like, this has got us. Like, and inevitably what happens, like the arrival of punk rock or whatever, there's somebody's bound to crash through this thing and do something creative and awesome. And it happens, by the way. I bump into things where I'm like, well, that's fucking really neat. And it keeps my attention. But you just have to step up your game so much.
do you have to write every day? Is that something you need to do every day? Or is writing for you, okay, I'm going to take this week and next week and I'm going to write, or I'm going to collaborate with people? Or do you write every day?
I write every day, and lately,
Wow.
since COVID, I've been writing at about 3 a.m. So I wake up at 3 a.m, and my brain is free of judgments at that time. It might be full of dread, but it's free of judgments. And I'll just kind of like write what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, and I find that stuff is really incredibly vibrant and like to the bone. So I do like an hour of writing every night when I wake up. I just did it last night, and then I'll write songs.
You want to hear a crazy funny story about writing?
Yeah.
Fleetwood Mac came to the Sirius Studios. I don't know. It was pre-pandemic, maybe a couple years prior. They weren't getting along. I mean, they literally we had to keep them away from each other in the building, right? So my job that day was to work with Christine McVie, because they were going to have a pop-up channel. And Christine told the story about the song "You Make Lovin' Fun." There they are at this house and recording studio in England for the Rumors album. And she comes up with the idea of this at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night in her room. She had this little guitar, little keyboard. And she had nothing back then to write this down or record it. So she stayed up the entire night.
So she wouldn't forget.
Kept playing it over and over and over again to
That's
herself
funny.
until she could wake up the engineer at like 5:30 in the morning to go down and lay something down.
That's incredible.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So, but not, considering technology, if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a melody in your head, you could sneak to a quiet room and put it into your phone and you're good to go.
Yep.
If you get tired.
I've got a million of them.
Yeah.
That
was not the option she had.
Yeah, no, and they were probably so high as well that it's easy to stay up. But yeah, so I've got I have 4,000 recordings in my notes, and then I've got 6 notebooks, and then I've got to me, what it comes
guard
down
that phone with your life.
Dude, imagine. I'm going to back that shit up. I feel really worthless if I feel like there's things in me that I haven't gotten out, And I feel
there's
like
a
if
song there, Matt. Back
That's
that
true.
shit up.
back that shit up, back that
Hey, I
shit
can
up.
get that on the radio for
Dude,
you, man.
it's
That
gonna be
fits.
good. Let's do it. We're gonna revive radio right now with just back that shit up, the remix. But yeah, it's like I feel like if I don't get it out of me, I'm carrying a weight with me.
Yeah.
That's the best way to put
So
it.
you got to get it out. Well, that's kind of works for me at 3 a.m. I got to get that out of me too. I pee now at 3 a.m. So
Yeah, that's right.
That's
Do you
basically what I'm up
sit
to.
when you pee, I'm sure, right? I'm a sitter, and my later, it's fucking great, except my nuts are getting longer, so it's like at some point they're gonna
So they start to drop into the
Yeah,
water, huh?
It's gonna be Poseidon's kiss. That's what I call it when it's
That's
my
funny.
nuts touch the water.
Is
I
that
mean,
I know you live in a house of women, so I don't know if that's you do it out of necessity or demand.
It's pretty fun. I like to
put the
sit
seat down,
and just
put the
take
seat
my
down.
time. I just take my time. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be.
There's no
I don't
rush.
like to be bullied by time. Do you know what I'm saying?
Two guys and a mic discussing Matt Nathanson's bathroom habits.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's fun anytime.
That's good stuff. But to back up for a minute about TikTok, I usually watch hot blondes jumping on trampolines. That's usually what I watch on TikTok. So that's basically what my
Dude,
interests are.
sometimes my algorithm loves that channel.
Oh.
I'll be like, what did I do that all
What
of a
is
sudden I'm
going
getting
on
like,
here?
I must have mentioned feet because like there's just hot women in their feet. I mean, this is crazy. I'm down. You know what I mean?
That's funny. So I think Jim mentioned, but are you in San Francisco? Is that
Yeah,
what he said?
Right in the
So you-
city. Yeah.
Wow. So not living there, although we did spend part of our honeymoon there. We used to go to the famous Gavin convention. We had Dave Sholin on a previous podcast.
They
He
were
was part
talking
of
about the
Gavin.
Mitchell Brothers place
Yeah,
last
we're
week.
talking about
Dude,
Mitchell
that
Brothers back in
place
the day.
was fucking bananas.
That's what we spoke about. But how bad is San Francisco now? Because I come from New York, and every time I go back, I see a change, and people
Yeah.
say, "Oh, it's a mess. It's a disaster." How bad, basically, San Francisco is? It as bad as they say?
No,
No.
it really isn't. Like
Good.
as a
Good.
country, like I travel all the time, and as a country, we are definitely not taking care of people. Like, and I don't know how to do it. I have no armchair shit, but like there are more people. I was just in Cincinnati, and the Kroger's. I went to the Kroger's, and it was like holy shit. And there was an armed guard at the door. You know, it's like this is a problem countrywide, and San Francisco's got it acutely because it's 7 by 7. That's
Right.
it. You know, and like, but when I first moved here, I remember people always like, and there are certain parts of the town that have gotten way worse. Like that's for real. Like really only one place has gotten the Tenderloin, which used to be maybe a 2-block radius has now become a 4 or 5 block radius. And it's a real struggle and people are dying and it's a bummer, but and it's like, it's criminal actually. But like it's happening in Texas. It's happening. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
everywhere.
Seattle,
and San
New York,
Francisco.
Chicago.
Totally. And when I was here first in 94, I remember came out of my first apartment on 18th Street in the Castro, came out and there's a dude just shitting in the doorway of
Nice.
my building. And I was like,
Wow.
whoa. And then a couple days later, I'd be up in my living room and I'd look down and there'd be 2 dudes doing crack in a car. Like, and so I can only say that nobody has shit in the doorway of my house since, and then I haven't seen anybody doing crack. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like San Francisco's always been a wild ride, and because it's just everybody's on top of each other.
But it's such a gorgeous city. You
beautiful.
know, you hate to see.
Yeah.
Anything
That-
happen to
Well,
it?
it's got bad PR, by the way. We've got terrible PR. That I will say, like, because I live here and I've never felt unsafe. And it's like, and every time I go somewhere, somebody's like, dude, San Francisco, huh? And I'll be like, I don't think so. Like and I'm a white fucking 6 foot, 230 pound, you know, like I don't fucking, you know, I don't be scared much. But like that being said, yeah, it just feels like we have a crisis of humans in the world and we're not, at least in this country, really bad. And we're not, I don't know how we can fix it, but we are not. And everybody is so self-focused post-COVID. Everybody's so focused on their own financial picture and their own experience in the world that like it's not going to get solved anytime soon.
It's
Two guys and a
terrible.
mic. It is Matt Nathanson with Mark and I. Longtime friend, great musician and artist. All right, let's get to your top 5 albums of all time, according to Matt Nathanson.
Okay, I want to hear yours. by the way.
We had
that
this
was a couple
discussion, by the
podcasts
way.
back. You
I
guys-
know, so
you-
I'm going to find it, but I want to hear, just give me a quick rundown, both of you.
Okay. For me, top 5. Well, number 1 is The Wall by Pink Floyd.
Okay.
Okay. Number 2 is Duke by Genesis.
Oh, I love your progness.
Yes. Number 3 is 1984 by Van Halen.
Sure.
Wow.
Number 5 would be the Let It Be album by the Beatles.
Yep.
And that was 4, right? So
Yep,
4 or
you got
5?
one more.
Okay. And number 5 would be Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder.
Great
Wow,
fucking record.
good.
You're picking
Yeah.
some good ones. Jesus. All right, Mark,
As
what's
far
yours?
as mine, I don't remember what I picked, honestly. I think I was pretty generic. I think I had like Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run. I think I had the Beatles' White Album or Sgt. Pepper's. I wasn't as deep as Jim was. I go for the hits. I'm a commercial guy.
I love
think
it.
I had Billy Joel in there because I'm a big fan of Billy Joel. Billy Joel, Springsteen, obviously being in New York and Jersey. That's, that was where we spent our life.
Didn't you have a
And,
Barry Manilow album on there?
he's making a joke because I worked for Barry for many
Dude,
years.
I
and he's
fucking
still a
love
good
Barry.
friend.
I'll go to the mat
I'm
for
not
Barry.
making a joke on Barry.
No,
Barry's
no,
a great
I would
artist
go-
and performer.
Dude, I mean, like Copacabana changed my life as a young
Yeah.
man.
That's
Yeah.
funny because I'm still in touch with them. I still do a lot of stuff with him. He's been awfully kind to my family. I got to when I started to work for him because I left A&M Records as a messenger back in the day, and I actually met Barry on the street. And my wife, who at the time was my girlfriend, was a big Manilow fan, and this before cell phones and text or anything. Here I am going down the street of 57th Street. I meet Barry Manilow, and she's never going to believe me. So he said, "Come up to the Arista office, and I'll give you an autograph." And I went up to. He gave me the autograph. I brought it home. And I was smart enough to see the management address on the bottom of the 8x10. So I quickly went back to the A&M, typed up a letter on A&M stationery like I was a big record executive. And I got myself an interview with them. And I left A&M to go work for Barry, who at the time was battling with Clive Davis because he was on Arista and they had a fallout. And he went over to RCA. They were staffing up and he hired me to go work for him at $35,000 a year back then. And I worked for management. But the main thing that I always talk about that story is RCA was being run by Jose Menendez. Does that name ring a bell?
The father? The
Yep,
father?
father.
You're
that was
kidding.
a time when record companies thought they could hire other people to run record companies. And
Yes.
he was running Hertz. That's why the kids were friends with O.J. Simpson and everybody. So he came in as president of RCA and he signed Barry. He signed the big three. He signed Barry, I think maybe Kenny Rogers, Diana Ross, or somebody. And I think, I can't prove it, but I think kind of Clive kind of, blacklisted that album a little bit at radio. And Barry came back to Arista, and I ended up then going back to Arista and worked there for 20 years or so.
His 2 sons are still in jail, aren't they?
Yeah,
They
in
haven't
fact,
gotten
there's
out.
some kind of a
Dude.
streaming thing I'm reading about the Sons.
The fact that's crazy that I had no idea that guy was even a label anywhere in the music business.
And I'm going to go on record because they've said that he sexually abused these kids and all that. I got to tell you, I mean, I work for Don Einer, a lot of macho people in the business. I cannot see Jose Menendez sexually abusing his children. I think they whacked him because he was very strict. He was tough. He wasn't taking any crap. He was forcing them to take tennis lessons, this, that, and the other thing. From what I heard, of course, because we have a legal department, I have to watch what I say, but I don't think he was faithful to his
Allegedly.
wife. He had girlfriends. I mean, this was a man's man. He was a macho Cuban who swam here from Cuba. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't do things behind closed doors, but I kind of find that hard to believe. I think they use that as an excuse just to
Allegedly, Mark. Remember that
Allegedly.
word.
I don't know
love
what
that-
happened. I
I
wasn't
love
there.
that your
I know nothing.
sentences are punctuated
I know
by
nothing
Jim
about
just
nothing.
saying allegedly. That's great.
We're a small operation. We can't get sued yet. Okay?
Allegedly.
Yeah.
I like it. It's
That's
great.
just my opinion. I mean, I just saw Jose like that, and maybe, who knows, allegedly. But that's the
Crazy.
whole story with RCA. And
I love that you literally
background Manilow.
you ingratiated yourself so much with him and the management that you literally just went with him. He was only at RCA for that one record.
Or one album, and then he got signed back to Arista. And then, of course, I couldn't work for management anymore because they were going back and didn't have their own office. But Arista knew me through Barry, and I started to work for Clive Davis at night, thankfully, for somebody that hired me to be his night, because he would work till 11 o'clock at night. Clive was amazing.
Wow.
And so I started work for him at night, and then I transitioned into the promotion department. But
What year did
it
you
was an
start at
experience.
A&M, by the way? What year were you start with? What was that?
Well, actually, we had Rick Stone on, who was my boss at A&M back in the Charlie Minor days, if you knew Charlie Minor. But
Oh,
I
wow.
bet I started in 19, I want to say, well, I got married in 86. I worked for Barry prior to that, probably 83, 84, maybe.
Okay.
It was around Sting and Brian Adams, and we
Of
spoke about
course. Of
those
course.
stories. I mean,
John
A&M was
Hyatt
hot.
was on A&M as well, right?
I mean,
Hyatt.
A&M was a great label. I mean, but they were kind of like Arista, small family like.
Yep.
And they had hits, and they had artists. I mean, I met Sting there, who we spoke about on previous podcasts, was not the nicest guy to me. I remember. But
No, I'm sure.
but
That
Brian
guy.
Adams was great. We spoke about that. We had Jeffrey Osborne was fun. And that was when IRS had a small little deal at A&M, and they had, the police and all that stuff. I mean, it was great. It was great
Before-
stuff back in the day.
Before we run down Matt's albums, you guys want to hear, this will age us all a little bit. It's the 40th anniversary of Into the Gap by the Thompson Twins this year.
Arista Records, man. There you go. Another shout out.
40th
Yeah, they were.
anniversary.
Well, that's bananas. And
Yeah.
so I've been with my wife for 33 years. That's the only thing that makes that not weird, is that I'll be like, oh yeah, 33 years ago, Thompson Twins, that were ancient history to me. By the time I met my girlfriend, then became my wife, and I'm like, okay, but 40 years is bananas. Some other things celebrated a 50-year, like the 50th birthday recently, and I was like, what the fuck? And
Oh,
like
you know what it is? This weekend it premieres. SNL turns 50
Oh.
Saturday night.
And they're
bananas.
doing a whole thing about Springsteen. He's 75 now. That's pretty
Yeah.
amazing too.
Oh, that's
Wow.
wild.
I'm getting
They're
depressed.
they're doing
Can
that
we move on
movie
to your
on-
5 big state. Come on.
They're
Dave.
doing a movie. Before we do that, they're doing a movie about Springsteen. Jeremy
that's what
Allen
they were
White
talking about,
is
yeah.
playing.
Oh yeah, I
Bruce.
read that. Yeah, I read
no,
that.
he's playing Bob Dylan.
No, Timothy Chalaphant is playing Dylan,
Oh,
Yeah.
I mixed
and
them
then
up,
the kid
sorry.
from The Bear is playing.
love The Bear.
Springsteen.
Sorry,
Great
you were
show.
right, Jim. I'm wrong again. I'm always
Yeah.
wrong. The wife was right.
All right, Matt. What do you got? What's your top
So
5?
I had a really hard time. I've got a very long list, and I was thinking I'm just going to definitely give you the top 2 that I. So Octung Baby is one of my favorite records of
Can't
all
argue
time.
that.
Lou Reed, New York is one of my favorite
Ooh.
records of all time.
Very cool.
Ooh.
Like for real, for real. Then everything gets a little bit hazy. So I would say the first Violent Femmes record
Uh-huh.
I think is like a perfect. It's just perfect. And I went and listened to all these kind of yesterday. I was like,
I
well,
don't
I'm
think
not
Mark
gonna.
Look
knows
at
them.
you.
Mark doesn't know the Violent Femmes.
I'm AC, man. AC, hot AC. We don't know these things.
Blister in the Sun, Mark. Go listen to it.
I mean, dude,
Hey,
the whole.
I
the
work
whole-
Milli Vanilli. Have a little respect, okay?
I blame that on the rain. Ayo,
Oh, look at this.
blame it on the rain. But yeah, I would say the Violent Femmes record is sort of perfection,
Yep.
start to finish. And like I went looking, so just as a thing, so I went looking like at Van Halen records, and I was like, all right, what Van Halen record do I? I looked at all my favorite bands, and I was like, well, I would say Women and Children first, and then I went and listened, and I was like, I think that's kind of fat, that song. Or I love Van Halen 2, and then I'm like, oh, that one, eh. So I couldn't center on a Van Halen record that to me, top to bottom, like did it. Although there's ones that do it close, but to me, for example, like 1984, you have a song like 1984, which is a thing that strangely takes up space on a record that you don't need to take up space. So I was like, well, I'm not going to give one of my top 5 for that. Like I got real fucking nerdy on this.
Yeah, I guess you did.
So it was awesome. So, and then I was like, all right, my Indigo Girls, my favorites. And I was like, well, if I could take certain songs off certain, anyway. So I would say Octung Baby, New York, Lou Reed. I would say the first Violent Femmes record. I would say Def Leppard, Hysteria.
Mm.
Although there was a tie in the metal category, and this is, as a Van Halen fan, this is going to be wild to you. So this is where it got kind of jammed up. Kiss Destroyer, I think, is top to bottom a perfect record. Def Leppard Hysteria, I think, is top to bottom a perfect record. Appetite for Destruction is like a 98.5% perfect record. The first David Lee Roth record, Eat 'Em and Smile, is about 33 minutes long, and I think there's not an ounce of fat on it. And so I would almost put that record over a Van Halen record, which is sacrilege because I'm a Van Halen fanatic. So anyway, so this is a long answer, so I apologize. Then I was like, the first Suzanne Vega record is fucking magical all the way through. The first Amy Mann solo record, whatever, perfect all the way through. Prince, I love Prince. What Prince records?
yeah.
And I was like, well, if I could take the audio soundtrack out of the Sign of the Times movie, which I have on cassette and CD, and that I've listened to, it from the audio of that movie is to me so much better than the record, because the record's like Prince demos. They're kind of two-dimensional. They're kind of fun, but like with Sheila on drums and the band and Kat, who just passed today, I was like, whoa, Sign of the Times, if I could just take the audio, that record, I would go to a desert island with that. And then I was like, well, how about Stop Making Sense? I was like, that record is perfect. Like, and it's more perfect to me than, say, Remain in Light or, any Talking Heads record. To me, Stop Making Sense just has this great. So anyway.
Better than Speaking in Tongues.
Yeah, I have to say, only because like it fits, the topography of it is so exceptional, the way they built it to be. There's just great moments. So anyway, there's that. Jeff Buckley Grace, I think, is pretty fantastic. Peter Gabriel So, Back in Black, I love, but I took off the list. Hold on. And then Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet, which I think is a fucking masterpiece. Afghan Wigs have a record called Black Love that I think is magical. The second Black Crowes record, Southern Harmony Musical Companion, I think is top to bottom pretty great. Jane's Addiction, Nothing Shocking. I can listen to at any point. So really, if I were going to pick, I would say Octung Baby, Lou Reed, New York, and then Graceland. I want to put Graceland in there, but I didn't.
That's a good one.
So like, and then I'd say Hysteria. Out of all the metal records, I feel like Hysteria is top to bottom great. And there's Aerosmith records. So how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4.
36. I counted.
And then my fifth one, if I had to pick out of this fucking mess, I would pick, oh my God, it's so hard. But I would say, because Kat passed today, I would say Sign of the Times, if I could take the audio of Sign of the Times and make my own record based on that, I could live on a desert island with those 5 records and feel pretty complete.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't argue with any on the list. And if I had to put a bonus on mine, Peter Gabriel would definitely be there, because I don't think there's a better song ever than Sledgehammer.
Dude, it's exceptional. And then Us too. The record after it, I think is even great. And then the first Amy Mann record is so good, called Whatever. I listened to that last night and I was like, these songs are great. And the first Suzanne Vega record, and I realized the thing that does it for me is the songs are great. When the songs are great and when there's a cinematicness to the layout where you can descend into the record on song 1 and then emerge on song 10, and it takes you somewhere. Like Lou Reed, New York is just 4 instruments, pretty much. Lou, like Rob Wasserman on bass, Mark Roth, or some guitar player and a drummer. And it's like, but you listen to it and you feel like with the lyric and with the delivery and the sonics, you feel like you're like in New York in 1988 or whatever. And you're like, you can hear everything. And I hang on that record like it's my fucking, like it's the Bible. I just think that record is perfect. And it's funny because it's not Octung Baby's all vibe and great songs. And so you get that you're descending into this kind of feel, and it starts with a thing. Lou Reed New York is just a dude singing these songs, but for some reason, his voice and the way the sonics sound and the way the band is pushing, it drags me into this feeling. And that's kind of what I based these on, was like, all right, what do I get lost in every time I put it on song 1 to the end? And it was impossible. You've given me an impossible task.
Hey, Jim,
Matt Nathanson, it's 2 guys and a mic. I'm sorry to cut you off, Mark.
We're very unprofessional.
Go ahead.
I love it.
I remembered an album I had on my list. It was the Chipmunks Christmas album. I had that on my list. That was top 5 because they were ahead of their time. Come on, Jim.
Simon, Alvin, and what was the other one?
Theodore.
Shut up.
Yeah.
I had they had a rock and roll one where they did You May Be Right. They did You May Be Right. They did a Cars song. They did, and I remember as a kid, I listened to that like relentlessly. It's great.
Instrumentally, I'd have to throw maybe one more album on my list, which would go past 5, but the Rush album that contained Moving Pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Had YYZ and Limelight and Tom Sawyer on it.
That's a record that you feel like, and I don't know if it's the video at that studio, Le Studio. Do you remember, like in the snow?
Yeah.
But there's an element of that record where you feel like you're fucking hanging out in Canada in some weird universe. It's like, and the cover, oh my God, what a great record.
Mark, I remember one other one. Didn't you put Rumors from Fleetwood Mac on your
Yeah,
list?
I had them in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right, all the
record.
generic ones, all the ones that sold.
Dude,
big.
dude,
That's what
Oh,
I'm-
listen.
I think the meeting of art and commerce is where you get the good shit. And
Yeah.
Rumors could not be a bigger example of that. I mean, Hysteria, like ones where they know what they're doing in the market, but at the same time, they're not allowing it to really affect the vulnerability of what they're doing. And Rumors it has to be the poster child for that.
Yeah.
It's a great album.
And the
But
fact
Matt,
that they
before
were
you
all
go-
sleeping with each other and doing this. and
So
that,
much fucking.
it's-
Can you
yeah.
imagine how awesome that must have been? I mean,
Everybody's banging everybody.
Stevie Nicks at that time, there was second to none in terms of like just magical like power. I think I would have walked into the sea if I'd been able to ever even just like touch her shoulder. And then I'd be
Yeah.
like, all right, later. And then I'd be
I'm
like,
back.
I've reached Mecca, and then just walk into the ocean, never come back.
There you go.
Matt, I was
There
going to
you go.
ask you. So, like, if you're in a car and you're listening to songs on the radio, do you sing along? I mean, is there a song that you really like that you wish you wrote or said, "Wow, that's
I
a
mean,
great song"?
I can't get away from them. There's a million. And that's the hardest part about being creative when you're a super music fanatic, for me at least, is that getting over how magical the songs are to you can really pollute the creativity of your own songs. Because instead of seeing them as made by mortals, like these things where magic occurs, for most of my life, I've seen the whole thing as magic. And only recently have I emerged from it and been like, oh, these are just fucking people. Like, these are just like Hysteria is just Def Leppard and Mutt Lange just fucking grinding against a thing and making it great. Rumors was like Lindsay at that point in his life. And then, it's just, so yeah, I sing constantly. It's all I do. And I love it. And I sing in my house and I sing at the top out of my range. And there's no music I don't have a guilty pleasure. I just have pleasure when it comes to music.
Well, on that note, did you ever consider maybe doing a project of your all-time favorite songs and your version of them?
So I did, just so you know, I did two weird ones. I did Pyromatia, which was a Def Leppard covers EP.
Yeah.
And I got to become friends with those guys through that, which was great.
Okay.
Every couple records, I'll do like weird little. So I did a cover during pandemic. I did Achtung Baby in its entirety, which again I don't recommend. Pardon me,
Bless you.
because the Achtung Baby is magical because U2 is magical because the engine of that band makes those songs come alive. The songs by themselves, it's not like playing Always Something There to Remind Me by Burt Bacharach. You know what I mean? Like where the song plays itself. These are songs where like it's the energy of the band. So I've done Hysteria, or I did Pyromatia, which was a Def Leppard one. I did a tribute to bands from Chicago and the surrounding areas. So Richard Marx and I did a cover of Surrender, and then Patrick from Fall Out Boy and I did a Chance the Rapper song, and I did a Liz Phair
wow.
song. So I do these little things like in between, and I've got three of them: Pyromatia, Postcards from Chicago, and Achtung Matty. And I've got a bunch of on the hook. I'd love to do a Prince one. I'd love to do an REM one, an Indigo Girls one.
Well, very cool.
Yeah.
We've been talking with Matt Nathanson, two guys and a mic. Please like, subscribe, comment. We love comments, and always ring the bell till you get notified when new episodes will be going live, usually every Monday on YouTube. Matt, we can't thank you enough. This has been a blast. It's
Dude,
great to see you.
I love
Hope
this.
the family's doing well.
Yeah, everything's great.
Kathleen says hello.
Yeah, please say hi to Kathleen for me. So rad.
Will
And
do.
and yeah, you guys, this is great. I could have gone on, as you could tell, my top 5 list was a
There's a
top
lot of
300.
enthusiasm. Yeah,
So
but
it's
Jim, I
great.
think you should note he's the second Matt we've had on the show. Matt Carney and Matt Nathanson. So there you
That's
go.
true.
Oh, nice. I'm a double T. He's a single T. I like
Yeah.
this. You're getting,
There you go.
get the triple T next.
We
We're
also
working on
had
it.
Johnny Resnick was on.
I love
was
that
been on
guy.
the show.
I fucking love
was
that
good.
guy. He's
He
the
was funny.
best.
I mean,
Yeah.
I had to ask him how he get his hair a certain way. So that was
He's got
important for me.
exceptional hair.
We spoke about it. We spoke about it.
It's like a beautiful weapon.
Yeah, we
Right.
spoke about it. He just goes in and goes, do this, this, and this. And
I don't think it
that's
works that way. I think he was lying to
Yeah,
us.
I'm
think
sure.
I think you need to
somebody
have.
does that.
I think you need to have fucking like guns. That
Look at
guy's
you, you got some
so
guns.
dude, not like Johnny. That guy's psyched. He just looks
Yeah.
like he
He's
looks
ripped.
like yeah. That's why his hair does that. It's afraid of his body.
He's ripped. I think he's sitting
That's
in the
great.
chair with those little silver
Curlers and
pieces of foil
flat
in his
irons
hair.
and stuff. It looked good. But we had
That's
a good
more.
time with him.
Oh my God, that's more of a Robbie thing. Can't you tell? So good.
Matt, when are you coming to Florida to play, man? We got to get together.
We'll be there. I think there's a record soon on the horizon, coming out soon, and then a tour imminently. So yeah, I'll be down and we'll connect.
Tampa's like an hour away, and he'll join us if you don't make it to Fort Myers or Naples. A lot of people play Tampa and the outlining areas.
I love it. We'll do it for sure. That'd be great.
Down.
Thanks again, Matt Nathanson. 2 guys and a mic. Like, subscribe, and
It was
see you
great,
on
man.
the next episode.
Dude, that was a blast. Thanks so much.
Thank you, buddy boy.
Awesome. Right on. Have a good rest of your days. Talk soon.